It's 1 p.m. on August 24th, 79 AD. You are standing in your house in Pompeii, and the sky is turning black in the middle of the afternoon. Vesuvius has been rumbling for days. Small tremors, easy to ignore. Cracked plaster. A dog barking at nothing. You noticed. Everyone noticed. Nobody did anything about it, because nothing ever came of tremors before. Now look up. The mountain that has sat quietly on the horizon your entire life is throwing a column of ash and rock miles into the sky. Ash is already drifting down over the rooftops like gray snow, settling on your shoulders, on the market stalls, on the fountain where you filled a jug this morning. You have hours, actual hours, right now, to walk out the city gate and put distance between yourself and that mountain. You are not leaving. Picture yourself standing in the doorway, one hand on the frame, looking at the ash falling, at your neighbor sweeping his own front step like it's just another dusty afternoon, at your own furniture, your own life, sitting exactly where you left it this morning. Why aren't you moving? That is the real question of this video. Not what happened at Pompeii. You already know what happened. Everyone knows what happened. 2,000 people died under ash and rock, and their outlines are still visible today, frozen in the exact positions they were standing in when it caught them. The question nobody answers is the one that should actually keep you up at night. These people had time. Real, measurable hours. Some of them had almost a full day, and most of them used that time to do almost nothing. This isn't a story about a volcano. A volcano is just rock and pressure. This is a story about what happens inside a human brain in the hours before a disaster. And it is happening inside your brain right now. Today, about something in your own life you already know is a problem and haven't moved on yet. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why those 2,000 people stayed. And you will recognize the same reason, wearing different clothes, in your own life. Stay with me, because there's one specific thing worth knowing. By the end of this video, you will know the single question that separates the 2,000 people who died in Pompeii from the ones who walked out alive. It is not about intelligence. It is not about courage. It is about one specific moment in your brain that most people never reach. Let's lay out exactly what happened that day, hour by hour, because the timeline is the whole point. Start a few days earlier. Small earthquakes shake the region. Plates rattle. Dogs act strange. This is Campania, though. Earthquakes happen here all the time. Pompeii itself had been half rebuilt after a bigger quake 17 years earlier. A few more tremors barely register as news. Life goes on. Bread gets baked. Wine gets sold. Nobody packs a bag. Now picture the morning of August 24th. Ordinary. Market stalls open. People are shopping, eating, arguing over prices, exactly like any other day in a busy Roman city. Then, just after midday, Vesuvius erupts. Not a slow smoking peak. An explosion. A column of pumice and ash punching 20 miles straight up into the sky, so tall that people miles away can see it and have no idea what they're looking at. Picture the market frozen mid-transaction. Every head tilted back. A coin still in someone's outstretched hand. For the next few hours, it's mostly falling debris. Light pumice stone, like gray hail, and ash drifting down steadily. Annoying. Frightening, maybe. But survivable. People are coughing, covering their heads with pillows and cushions, ducking into doorways. This is the exact window where leaving is still very possible. The road out of the city is right there. By 5 o'clock, picture the ash and pumice piling up outside, already 10 centimeters deep on the streets, and climbing. Roofs are starting to sag and, in some houses, starting to cave in under the weight. And here's the detail that should stop you. At 5 o'clock, with ash already 10 centimeters deep and roofs collapsing, most people are still in the city. Not fleeing. Staying. Picture a family, gathered inside a house lit only by lamplight in the middle of the afternoon, deciding whether tonight is really the night to leave everything behind. Some people do go. The ones who leave early, in that first window, mostly survive. That's not luck. That's the entire lesson of this video compressed into one sentence. The people who acted early lived, and the people who waited for more certainty waited too long. Because just after midnight, everything changes. A pyroclastic surge, a scalding wall of gas, ash, and rock moving down the mountain far faster than any human can run, sweeps into the city. Picture it arriving in the space of a breath. By this point, escape isn't a choice anymore. It's simply too late. Here is the fact this entire video sits on top of. Most people at Pompeii had somewhere between 12 and 18 hours of warning before that final surge. 12 to 18 hours. That is not a blink of an eye. That is most of a working day. And a huge number of people spent nearly all of it exactly where they started, inside their own homes, waiting to see what would happen next. So now the real question sharpens. Not, why did Pompeii get destroyed? A volcano did that part. The real question is, why did so many people, with that much warning, choose to stay? The answer starts with a bug in your brain that is running in you right now. Today, about something you already half know you should deal with. Here's the first reason nobody ran, and it has a name. Psychologists call it normalcy bias. Picture your brain as a machine with one default setting. When something strange happens, its first move isn't panic. Its first move is to assume the strange thing is basically fine. Reach for the calmest explanation available and stick with it, even while evidence keeps piling up. Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist behind Thinking, Fast and Slow, describes this as your brain's fast, automatic system doing what it's built to do. Take a shortcut, based on what has always been true before, rather than slowly and carefully reevaluating from zero every single time something changes. And here's what made that shortcut especially dangerous in Pompeii. Vesuvius had not erupted in nearly 1,800 years. Picture that stretch of time. Not one person alive in the city, not their parents, not their grandparents, not anyone in living memory, had ever seen that mountain do anything except sit there, green and quiet, on the horizon. To your brain, silence isn't neutral information. Silence gets read as proof. Picture the mountain, day after day, year after year, doing nothing. Every single quiet day becomes one more piece of evidence stacking up in the "this is fine" column. By the time the ground finally starts shaking for real, your brain isn't starting from zero. It's starting from 1,800 years of nothing happens here. So when the tremors start a few days before the eruption, picture a Pompeian feeling the floor shake, glancing at a cracked wall, and thinking, earthquakes happen here. We rebuilt after the last one. This is normal. Not because that thought is stupid, because it is, statistically, the safest bet your brain has ever made before. Normalcy bias isn't a flaw invented for this one day. It's the wiring that lets you walk past 100 small warnings a year that really do mean nothing, without collapsing into fear every single time. The problem is that the same wiring can't tell the difference between the 1,000 times a distant rumble means nothing and the one time it means the mountain is about to end your life. Journalist Amanda Ripley studied this exact freeze response in her book, The Unthinkable, looking at real survivors of real disasters, plane crashes, fires, the World Trade Center. She found a strikingly consistent pattern. People don't jump straight from calm to action. There's a stage in between, and it can eat up almost all of your available time. Ripley calls it denial. Picture people in a smoke-filled office, gathering their coats, saving a document on their computer, finishing a phone call, before evacuating a building that is actively on fire. Not because they're careless, because the brain needs time to accept that the unthinkable thing is actually, truly happening. And that acceptance is often the slowest part of the entire disaster. Picture a Pompeian doing the exact same thing, only with a bag of ash accumulating outside instead of smoke. Watching the ash fall, deciding it will probably stop soon, waiting for one more sign to be sure, while the one resource that actually mattered, time, quietly runs out underneath the waiting. Here's what makes normalcy bias so hard to catch in the moment. It never feels like denial from the inside. It feels like patience. It feels like common sense. Picture someone glancing at the ash on the windowsill and thinking, calmly, reasonably, I'll decide in another hour, once I know more. That sentence sounds responsible. It sounds like exactly what a careful person would say. And it is precisely the sentence that ends up costing people the only window they had. This is bug number one. But normalcy bias alone doesn't explain everything. Because some people in Pompeii clearly knew the danger was real, and they still didn't leave. That's the part that should really bother you. So now you know the first reason nobody ran. But here's what makes it worse. Even the people who knew it was dangerous still didn't leave. And the reason why reveals something about every hard decision you've ever avoided in your own life. Here's bug number two, and it's a lot more social than normalcy bias. Picture yourself in that doorway again, ash falling, deciding whether to run. Now picture glancing across the street. Your neighbor is still there too. And his neighbor. And hers. If this were truly, obviously deadly, wouldn't more people already be running? This is social proof, and it's one of the most powerful shortcuts your brain owns. When you're not sure what to do, you don't calculate the danger from scratch. You look at what everyone around you is doing, and you copy it. In a crowd of people who are mostly staying put feels like the safe, sane choice, right up until it isn't. Now add the second bug stacked right on top of it. Sunk cost. Picture everything you own, everything you've built, sitting inside that house. Your business is here. Your family's things are here. Years of savings, poured into property, into stock, into a life that exists specifically in this city and nowhere else. Leaving doesn't just mean walking out the door. Leaving means admitting, out loud, to yourself, that all of it might be gone by morning. And that thought is so painful that a lot of people would rather quietly hope it isn't true than face it directly. Here's the detail almost nobody puts in the story, and it's the sharpest evidence we have. Archaeologists have found that some of the wealthiest residents of Pompeii, the people with the most property, the most stored valuables, the most to lose, appear to have stayed the longest. Picture a well-off household, found together, jewelry and coins gathered close, as if someone had taken the time to collect their most valuable possessions before finally deciding to move. That single detail tells you almost everything. The pull to protect what you've built can be strong enough to override the instinct that should be screaming at you to run empty-handed. Picture a man found with a heavy bag of coins still in his hand, caught mid-stride. Picture a group discovered together in a locked room, as if sheltering felt safer than facing the open road outside. Picture a family found gathered at a table, a meal barely started. Each of these isn't just a tragic detail for a documentary. Each one is a frozen snapshot of a real decision, made by a real person, weighing what they'd have to give up against the danger their brain still hadn't fully accepted as real. None of them were being careless. Picture the logic running through a shopkeeper's head as he locks his front door one more time out of pure habit, mid-eruption, before finally deciding to move. That single locked door tells you he was still, on some level, planning to come back. Still budgeting his attention like it was an ordinary evening instead of the last few hours of his life. That is exactly how deep sunk cost can reach, deep enough to shape a person's actions even after the danger is no longer abstract at all. This is the trap closing from two directions at once. Normalcy bias tells you the danger probably isn't real. Social proof tells you that if it were real, everyone would already be leaving. Sunk cost tells you that leaving means giving up everything you've spent your life building. None of these voices is lying to you exactly. Each one, on its own, is usually right. Most tremors really are nothing. Most crowds really do know something you don't. Most things you've built really are worth protecting. The problem is that on one specific day, all three of those usually reliable instincts point in exactly the wrong direction at exactly the same time. And the people trapped inside them don't get a second chance to recalculate. Here's the part of this video that should actually change something for you, because you are not exempt from any of this. Neither am I. The mountain in your life probably isn't made of rock, but the same three bugs are running in you right now, about something slower and quieter than a volcano. Picture climate change. It doesn't erupt in a single afternoon. It arrives one slightly hotter summer, one slightly stranger storm season, at a time. Exactly slow enough for normalcy bias to keep whispering that this is probably fine, that things have always evened out before, that surely someone smarter than you would be doing something if it were truly urgent. Picture a financial bubble, inflating month after month. Prices climbing past anything that makes sense, and everyone around you still buying, still holding, still confident. Social proof kicks in exactly the way it did on that street in Pompeii. If this were really about to collapse, wouldn't everyone else already be getting out? Picture a health warning you've been handed and quietly set aside. A number from a doctor. A symptom you've decided to wait on. Optimism bias, normalcy bias's close cousin, steps in here, and it whispers something very specific. That bad statistics happen to other people, not to you personally, and that you'll probably be the exception. None of this is a coincidence, and none of it is new. Your brain has not meaningfully updated its threat detection software since the year 79. It still runs on the same defaults. Trust the pattern, trust the crowd, protect what you've built, because for most of human history, those were exactly the right instincts to have. They just were never built for slow-motion disasters with a clear deadline sitting quietly in the future. Picture all three bugs stacking on top of each other again, just in modern clothes. Normalcy bias tells you the slightly hotter summer is probably just weather, the way it's always been weather. Social proof tells you that if the market were really about to turn, the confident people around you would already be selling. Sunk cost tells you that walking away from years of investment, of habit, of a life built a certain way, is a bigger and more painful decision than simply waiting one more quarter to see what happens. Each voice sounds sensible on its own. Together, they can keep a smart, careful person standing in a doorway of their own making for years. This is the exact same wiring behind the Stone Age brain running your modern life. The same ancient hardware, still making the calls, centuries after the world around it changed completely. Pompeii isn't a strange historical exception to how humans think. Pompeii is what your own decision-making looks like, filmed in slow motion and then sped up into a single unbearable night. So here's the uncomfortable question this video has been building toward the entire time. If your brain runs on the same defaults today that kept 2,000 people standing in their doorways in 79 AD, what exactly is sitting on your own horizon right now? Quiet, distant, easy to explain away, that you already know, somewhere underneath the noise, is not actually fine? So let's answer the question this whole video has been circling. Why didn't they run? Not because they were foolish. Not because they lacked information. They had the ash. They had the tremors. They had hours, in some cases most of a full day. What they didn't have was belief. Not knowledge. Belief. And those are not the same thing, even though it feels like they should be. You can know a fact and still not believe it in the part of your brain that actually decides what you do next. A Pompeian could know, technically, that the mountain was doing something it had never done before and still act, minute by minute, exactly like someone who believed nothing serious was happening. Knowing sits in the same calm, reasonable part of your mind that also assumes tomorrow will look like today. Believing is different. Believing is the moment your body actually reacts. The moment your legs start moving before your mind has finished arguing about whether they should. That gap between knowing and believing is where people die. Not just in Pompeii. In every slow-motion collapse that gives you time to think your way out of acting. Picture the gap itself as a physical space, a room you can stand inside. On one side of that room is knowing, calm, quiet, endlessly patient, perfectly happy to sit with a fact for years without ever once making you move. On the other side is believing, and believing has your legs already halfway out the door before your mind finishes the sentence. Most people spend their entire lives walking back and forth in that room, checking the facts again, nodding, agreeing, and somehow never quite arriving at the far wall. So here is the one question, the one this whole video has been aiming at from the very first scene. Not what should I do? Everyone already knows what they should do about the thing they've been avoiding. That question is easy, and it changes nothing, because it stays comfortably in your head. The real question is harder, and it's the one that actually moves your legs. What would I actually do, right now, today, if I truly believed this was real? Sit with that for a second, and be honest. If you knew, not suspected, knew, that the thing you've been putting off really was as serious as some quiet part of you already suspects, would today look different? Would you make the call you've been avoiding? Would you leave the situation you've been explaining away? Would you finally walk out the door while there's still time on the clock, instead of sweeping your front step and waiting for one more sign? The 2,000 people who died at Pompeii and the ones who walked out alive were not sorted by intelligence, or wealth, or courage. They were sorted by which side of that gap they were standing on when the time to decide ran out. Some of them closed it early, packed a bag on the first tremor, and simply left before they were completely sure they needed to. Most didn't close it until it was already too late to matter. You still have time. That's the part Pompeii never got. Whatever is quietly rumbling on your own horizon right now, you get to choose, today, whether to keep watching it from the doorway or actually move. If this made you think differently about the gap between knowing and believing, there's more where that came from. Every week on this channel, we take one big idea from history or psychology and follow it all the way down, until it says something true about the world you're actually living in right now. Subscribe if you want to keep going. Drop a comment telling me which part hit hardest. I read every single one. And if someone you know needs to hear this, send it to them. That's how this channel grows. And that's how we keep making these. I'll see you in the next one.